I want to talk about this e-bike issue. And I mean, e-bikes are exploding. I drive around and I see e-bikes all over the place. And young kids, teenagers and adults and older people on bikes. And generally, I think it's been a really great trend. But there was a tragic case that happened in Encinitas where a 15-year-old boy was killed on an e-bike. And this kid was a high achiever. He was an athlete. He was a ninth grader at the San Diego Academy out there in Encinitas. And he went to change lanes, and he I don't know if he went head on into a van or he got sideswiped by a van on the road, and he lost his life. And it's just tragic. Well, this kind of brings up a lot of people are saying, well, what do we do about e-bikes? And immediately you're seeing people kind of get all hot and bothered about it. We need more regulations on e-bikes, and we need to do this or do that. Well, e-bikes are exploding. I think they're a great innovation. I mean, I've been toying with the idea of getting one myself. It just makes biking a lot easier. It gets more people involved. It gets people out and about in the community. And I think as our cities become, let's say, less rural or even less suburban and become more and more urban, I think people are going to start to use bikes even more to get around town, to do various errands. And e-bikes are a great way to do that. So this is a beautiful thing. I mean, the e-bike revolution started a number of years ago, but they're just exploding everywhere. And you see them in the form of mountain bikes, in form of road bikes. Some of these look like these cool off-road BMX bikes that are e-bikes. And some of these kids, man, you see them flying down the street. Sometimes two of them on one bike going down the road. I will say, though, that there are some e-bike riders that are pretty out of control. And it makes you wonder what should be done with all of these e-bikes, because kids love them. I mean, it's a lot of fun. I mean, heck, I remember when I was a kid, I was, a huge bike rider back in the day. I raced BMX, but I also, I remember my stepsister came into town once and she had a moped. And I rode I was like 14 or 15, just like this young man that was tragically killed in Encinitas. And I would drive that all around my hometown. And I thought it was the greatest thing. And here I am, I'm driving, and I don't, I know how to ride a bike. I mean, especially a motor. This is like a very limited kind of a motorcycle. It's like a moped. It's so much fun to ride. But when you're 14 or 15, do you know all the traffic rules and et cetera? Most don't. But I think what needs to happen here is we need more bike lanes. And we've talked about that here in this podcast. And we're seeing this in San Diego quite a bit, more bike lanes. In some cases, on 4-lane roads, they're making 2 of those lanes hybrid lanes that cars and bikes share. That still gets a bit dangerous. I've seen some communities where there's a road and then there's a curb and then there's some landscaping. And then next to it, it's not necessarily a sidewalk, but it's like a bike lane. And it's just for bikes. I think the more of that we can put into, the way we plan our cities and do development, it would be a good thing. Especially as more biking, more e-biking is coming forward, and as our suburbs are becoming more urban. And I think that would be a really positive move. But at the same time, though, I think police need to be aware and be ticketing people that are on e-bikes that aren't following the rules. I mean, I think that's reasonable because they're dangerous for people that are involved. So as an automobile driver, you got to be really aware of e-bike riders. And as an e-bike rider, you've got to be driving or riding defensively. So I think as long as e-bike riders are following the rules, they're staying in the bike lane, they're on the trails, we should be like thumbs up, man. That's great. But terrible to see this story that happened in Encinitas. I just fear when this happens, when there's a terrible death of a young person on an e-bike, that's going to lead to crackdowns on e-bikes that are going to make them more difficult to ride and more regulations and more limits. I just rather we approach it differently, that we encourage e-biking, but we do it in as safe of a way as possible, because I think ultimately it's a really good thing for the individuals riding it and for people all over our neighborhoods.